Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Fun and Games Podcast. I'm Jeff Moonen.
And I'm Matt A.K. Stormageddon.
And you're listening to episode 123. And this episode, we are joined by one half of Trigger Happy Interactive, one of the creators of the upcoming FPS game Turbo Overkill, Sam Prebble. Mr. Prebble, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Sam, we're so excited to have you on. I remember we talked with Jaren, actually, who works at Apogee, the publisher of the upcoming Turbo Overkill. I remember talking with Jaren about how this is like the best kind of acid trip in cyberpunk form.
Oh my God, yeah.
It's very apparent that Turbo Overkill, to start, is obviously influenced by FPSs of the past, especially the faster ones like Doom. I'm curious, I guess, to start, since you're the lead developer on the game, is that where you're drawing the inspiration from? Did you grow up playing those kinds of games? Is that where the origins of Turbo Overkill come from?
Yeah, so I guess at the beginning I was playing Doom, like the 93 version of Doom, back when I was too young to be playing it. I think I was 5 years old or 6 years old.
We all were.
Yeah. And I think as soon as I played it, I was just addicted from day one. I begged my parents, it's like, please get the full version of this game. It's amazing. And they were a bit skeptical about it, but when I get passionate about something, I get like really passionate about it. So and it was only a little after I started playing Doom, I started getting into making levels for it, which, the ability to modify a game, I was so young at the time, I didn't even know, the modding thing was an actual thing, and it just blew my mind. And since then, I've just been playing Doom, modding Doom. But yeah, it's just something that I just never gotten sick of it. I've always been a big shooter fan. Most of the games I've played have just been shooters. And I've been making games for about, I think since I started in early 2010, dabbling with Unity and game engines and whatnot. And I was like, it took me a while to learn how to use that software. When I felt like I was confident enough with it, I was like, okay, I want to make my dream game, make something like Doom. I played a lot of other shooters like Titanfall, and I was playing Apex Legends at the time, and I just wanted to get all of the stuff I loved from the games I loved and just put it into one thing.
And that seems very apparent in Turbo Overkill. I mean, one of my favorite early cutscene moments is, so the main character that you play as has a chainsaw, but it's not on his hand, a la Ash from Evil Dead. But not too far afield from that, it comes out of his knee and is a prominent combat mechanic. But what I love is that this game isn't afraid to lean into the wacky and the comedy that was inherent in those older shooters. Because when you get a shotgun with a double barrel, it's not sawed off when you get it, but you pop that chainsaw out of your knee and saw off the front of the barrels.
And you gotta love the convenience of, it's not a chainsaw leg all the time. It just pops out when you need it to be. And I appreciate that in my cyberpunk future.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned, Matt, you mentioned Ash from Evil Dead before. When I was putting that scene together where he's sawing the front of the shotgun off, I had, on one monitor, I had that scene where he says groovy and the Evil Dead 2. I was just like trying to animate it as closely as I can to that scene from the movie. Evil Dead's something I didn't actually watch until a couple of years ago. And I don't know why I didn't watch it sooner. It's definitely one of my favorite movie series. But yeah, that silliness, like in the cinematics, when I started Turbo, I didn't want to make something that was going to be too serious, like taken too seriously. Like the whole concept, chainsaw for a leg, it's ridiculous. So I kind of wanted to make everything in the game just as ridiculous as that, because the only thing I really care about is I just want people to have fun with it. I don't want to bog people down with a serious story or any of that stuff, because that's not what I enjoyed from the games I played.
To be fair, there are a lot of games that would still try to make a chainsaw-like protagonist a very serious, gritty thing. And it's a wonderful, just, I mostly have got it from trailers and information, everything. It's an incredible world. It's so much fun. And it's a very big contrast from what I know to be one of your larger early projects. When you were mentioning Doom and everything, I was reminded of the Total Chaos mod that you worked on for a very long time. That is very atmospheric, very frightening, and extremely impressive.
Oh, thank you.
It's quite a contrast.
Yeah, it's kind of the polar opposite of what I was doing with that, where I wanted to bring people in with Total Chaos into a deep like personal story and like get people hooked into this world through the atmosphere. And then Turbo Overkill's like, yeah, there's still atmosphere in it, but it's the complete opposite. It's just like, just go in there, have fun, just murder anything you see without, thinking about it too much. But I am trying to get some of that horror from Total Chaos and put it into Turbo with the whole organics combining with like machine and just some of that body horror stuff. Yeah. So there's some parallels there, but I mean, ultimately, I just wanted to make something that you don't have to think about too much. You could just sit down and have a blast with it.
Yeah, it seems apparent. I mean, just from the demo that I got to play during the demo week over on Steam, and then also the gameplay videos that I've watched, what seems special about Turbo Overkill, it's doing a thing that Doom 2016 did and then Doom Eternal, but not a lot of other shooters were doing for a while since the original Doom as well, which is playing these games for speed. And what I love about Turbo Overkill when you have it in your hands is the momentum. The thing I loved most about old Doom, like all of us, is that momentum that you could just move from room to room, dodging, shifting, shooting, jumping. Was that important from the inception of Turbo Overkill to kind of have this momentum-based shooter?
So I wanted to give the player, full control as they were playing, which was important to have. I mean, it's kind of funny because the whole unlimited air control, like full air control when you're in the air, that's actually a bug that I just never got around to fixing.
But like all good features,
yeah,
like the best features.
Yeah, like when I started Turbo Overkill, I've never been so involved with like a player controller script where I've had to, I got to program in jumping and falling and proper collision and whatnot. But I kind of just made it in a way where I felt that it felt right for me when I was playing it. So it's like, okay, yeah, I could reduce the air control, but whenever I tried to implement that, it just felt like I was restricting the player by putting it in. So it was important for me to just make sure, like I don't want to sort of dampen people having fun with this, but trying to put all these rules in place. Like, as long as you feel like a badass playing the game, like it stays in there. Like anything that gets in the way of that, I kind of just want to like take it out of the game because it doesn't belong there. And it does feel a bit different from other shooters I've played because of that. It does make things feel a bit too fast sometimes, but yeah, it's mostly what I enjoy. Like I enjoy having having that freedom of movement. And when I started making this, I just wanted to make the game I wanted to play. And I'm just happy that I had a lot of doubts before putting the demo out, but it seems people enjoy the movement quite a bit, which is good to see.
Now, in terms of like definitely that like the design of the game that you want to be playing, it is an incredibly vertical first-person shooter. Admittedly, Matt is the bigger first-person shooter out of the two of us. So I definitely I'll have observations that are just like, that hasn't been a thing for 20 years, dude. What the hell? But given how there is sort of the sliding of utilizing the chainsaw leg for the faster you go, the more damage you do, getting a lot more vertical space, which wasn't part of the original DNA of first-person shooters. How early on, or even from like the inception, did you want it to be that vertical of a game in terms of traversal and speed and control freedom?
I think most of it just I want to say it happened organically, but to be honest, it all just happened accidentally. Like I'd block out levels and I would find, because the chainsaw mechanic was probably one of the first things that came about. I started this project in the beginning of 2019, and back then it was basically just a room. You had dual pistols and you just jump around on boxes, and because I was playing Apex Legends quite a bit at the time, I was like, okay, I got to put a slide mechanic in there. And when I put the slide in, I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. What happens if it killed enemies as you slid into them? And this was before I wanted to make a cyberpunk shooter, and that's kind of where I was like, okay, well, if you have a chainsaw for a leg, I guess it's going to be cyberpunk because it's, augmentations. It's the thing that made the most sense. So I was like, okay, I'll be a cyberpunk game. And I think the first room that I made was basically just a floor and a really long ramp. And I was like, okay, this could be the side of a building or something, right? When I said that, I was like, okay, well, if you have the side of a building, then the maps have to be really vertical to accommodate this, these sliding mechanics. And after that, I was like, okay, I got to put jump pads in. I got to put, a lot of,
there's the wall running.
Yeah. Well, the wall running was something that came quite late, but It was also, a Titanfall inspiration. And it was, and only recently I've I'm still expanding it. Like I've just put ladders in recently, so you can climb up to higher places a lot easier. There's ledge grabbing now to help with the mobility. That's one side of it, and the other side is I really like when I did a lot of Doom 2 mapping back in the day, and I really enjoyed making stuff that was really high. Like, you'd be able to go up really high and look back down on where you just were at the beginning of the map. Like, stuff like that I really enjoy.
Yeah.
I think something important to talk about when talking about a cyberpunk future and cyberpunk-inspired games is also the aesthetic and most importantly, the soundtrack. What I love about the soundtrack that I've heard so far, at least about Turbo Overkill, is it's this interesting mix of like heavy metal and synth, this kind of synth-core music. Can you tell us a little bit about the composition, the composer, and like how the music was created for this game as well?
Yeah, sure. There's been a lot of back and forth with the music. There's been many kind of people contributing to the soundtrack, and they all have brought their own unique styles and inspirations. But they have worked off each other quite well as well. Like personally, for me, I'm terrible with music. It's like if somebody gives me a soundtrack and say, "Hey, what do you think of this?" I'm like, "Yeah, it sounds great." Chuck it in the game, I'm like, "Yeah, this instantly makes it feel better." But with music, I'm not. I know it's gonna sound bad, but I'm not really I'm not really fussy with music. As long as it sounds badass and it complements the visuals, which like the composers we have on board at the moment, Nick and Chipper, like they've done an amazing job. Like I just give them, it's like, oh, here's the visual, and they come back in a week or two, and they're like, okay, how about this? And I check it in. I'm like, yeah, perfect. That's brilliant. Because when I started, I'll just say, like. I love the new Doom games. I love Mick Gordon. I love his work. I'm like, yeah, make it sound like Mick Gordon. But it's yeah, that's as far as my contribution goes with the music. I'm not really musically talented. I'm happy to sort of leave that side to the people that know what they're doing.
Are they building the music off of like demo stages that you're providing? Are they getting hands-on with the game? Are you just kind of giving like screenshots? Like what is the communication for like per level and stuff for that kind of design and creation?
Yeah, early on it was mostly mood boards and ideas. It's like, okay, there's going to be a level that has a train in it, or there's going to be a level that's you climb to the top of a skyscraper and you have to fight through every floor to get there. And it was basically just having those concepts, which are very rough, abstract ideas, and then working off that. But lately, with the way we're doing it now, is I'd put the level together first. So I'd put a rough block out and say, okay, this is going to be this level. This is the rough size of the area. There's like some basic texture work. You can play through it and get a feel for it. But I don't think like the composers we have on board at the moment, they're super fast. I could finish the level and say, here's the level, and then a week later it's like, okay, here's the music for it.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
There's been some amazing contributors to the soundtrack on this, and especially lately it's Nick and Chipper, they've been working on it themselves, and they've been doing an amazing job. Everyone who's worked on the soundtrack's done an amazing job.
I would imagine you'd be giving them fantastic mood boards and stuff, given your history, because before making games, you were working as a visual effects artist in film and television, yes?
Yeah, that's correct.
How much of that experience kind of carries through into game design these days?
It's kind of funny because I have worked at a couple of game studios as well, and most of the time I see people from, like I used to work at Weta, and it's like, I'd be working at somewhere like Rocketworks, and it's like people from Weta coming to Rocketworks, and it's like, they're completely different industries, but you're working with 3D, they work well together. Like, you can do visual effects for movies and you can make 3D models for games. Like, it's the same process, just different role sets, like, poly count and whatnot. But I felt my time during visual effects, I learned a lot about 3D modeling, a lot about texturing and materials, like concepts I didn't really know much about before. That was sort of my training into that. And it also working on Total Chaos, like I was working on that around the same time when I would actually take what I'd learned from working at somewhere like Weta and try and execute that on my own for my own projects. And it was sort of a learning curve from there. But yeah, I definitely think, I learned a lot working in visual effects. I don't think I'd ever go back into it though. It's it's a brutal lifestyle. But back when I was there, it was 100-hour weeks, and
wow.
my partner would call herself a Weta widow because she'd never see me.
Oh no.
I know that feel.
Yeah.
Now, moving that over to games, do you find it being wonderfully free because you don't have to integrate it as much with what's going on that's being filmed with live action actors, or is it, oh God, I'm paralyzed by possibility?
It's it is a bit paralyzing. It's also the thing I miss about movies is you work on a shot and it's like everything you see in the shot is the only thing you have to worry about. But in video games, it's like you have to worry about the shot, you have to worry about running around the shot, and it's like, oh, I could go right up to this wall and look at this wall, and a lot of the cheats you can get away with in film, you can't do that in games. Well, you have different cheats, but it is a lot more work, which is why I love doing cinematics in games, because it's kind of the best of both worlds, right? It's like you don't have to worry about the limitations of film, and having to make stuff super high quality. You could do that in a game world, and you can do a lot of the cheats you could do in film and get in the game. But yeah, it is sort of still a bit paralyzing, and that feeling of, oh God, it's like I gotta make sure everything's accounted for at the same time.
I'm curious, so obviously this is scheduled to come out sometime this year, hopefully, and on Steam, of course. It's got a Steam page. If you're listening right now and you've not gone to wish listed on Steam, please go do that. But I'm curious because a lot of retro shooters have very recently especially come to consoles like the Switch. Is there an interest in having consoles versions of this? Obviously, that's something that's probably down the line, but is there an interest from the team to try and get this onto consoles as well?
Yeah, so right now, the plan is to go to the main consoles, so Xbox, PlayStation, and Switch.
Mm-hmm.
As for further platforms, we haven't really announced anything yet. But I mean, I'd love to. I love handheld tech, and anything I can get it on. If I can do it, I'll be happy to do it. But except for mobile, I really don't like mobile. Sorry, mobile fans. I used to do mobile games back in the day, but oh God, never again.
They're hard to bridge together, like designed for one environment to the other, like because otherwise it's just to everything's detriment.
Yeah, I think I spent 4 years on a mobile game, and I got it done, I got it out, but. I learned a lot doing it, but I don't think I'd ever do it again. It's not it's not really a sustainable. I mean, if you're lucky, it's sustainable, but I was not lucky, unfortunately.
Alas.
Well, I guess fortunately, because I get to work on Turbo, so.
Sure, right,
Which we're excited about, yes.
Let's talk a little bit about your past with gaming. You mentioned earlier that, like, Doom was the thing. Doom, like, kind of made you see the Matrix Code, as it were. But do you remember, was Doom the first video game you ever played, or does it go back further than that?
Funnily enough, the first game I played was Monster Bash, which is an Apogee game.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Just recently had a re-release or an update.
Yeah. I've been playing that a bit. I've even stuck a little Easter egg in Turbo, like in the main menu when you go to I think the graphics options. There's like a background with Monster Bash playing in the background. There's also an arcade cabinet in there somewhere.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Yeah, but it was Monster Bash was my first game, and that was sort of my introduction to the whole world of DOS shareware and demos and stuff. But yeah, I started playing Doom. From there, I kind of went from I kind of jumped from one shooter to the next. It was only really in my 20s that I kind of expanded my interest in games beyond shooters. So I'd start playing stuff like Dark Souls, which when I first played it, I was like, there's no way in hell I'm going to like this game. It's the complete opposite of what I enjoy. But yeah, that first boss kind of got me hooked just because he kicked my ass so many times. I played stuff like Halo. Well, that's another shooter, I guess.
But
I mean, you have a consistent taste. Yeah. And
yeah.
And it's funny you mentioned Dark Souls because I'm a recent convert to the Church of Dark Souls. I beat Dark Souls 3 very recently, and now I'm playing Elden Ring obsessively. And I think you're speaking to something that is really interesting, right? Like, we're all for accessibility. We talk about it a lot on the show, and that games should be accessible. But for me, as a video game player, if I hit a wall with a game that I feel like I can't make progress on, then I stop. But what Dark Souls does, and now I've discovered, is similar to games like Metroid and Castlevania, you learn just enough from each fight that you're like, all right, I think I'm better equipped this time. And even though you've died 20 times, each time you get a little further and you learn a little more. I have to assume that there's a little bit of that in Turbo Overkill, because old shooters were the same way, right? You got to think about Doom, and like it's kind of like solving a puzzle moving through those stages. I have to assume there's some of that in Turbo Overkill as well. Kind of the navigation of the stages, figuring out the boss's patterns is just as much a puzzle as the rest of the game.
Yeah, so with Turbo, whenever you die, it was important for me to have, like, I wanted to do something like Ghost Runner, where if you die, it will take you back to the beginning of an encounter, and there's no loading, it will just instantly take you back. But I guess in Turbo's case, it's more of memorizing, spawn points, where the enemies spawn in an arena, where the items are placed. There are enemies that come around later on which do test your mobility a lot more, so, if you were to circle strafe around monsters quite a bit, there are enemies that will stop you from doing that. So it's just kind of wrenches that get thrown in there to make you think differently. I think I'm the worst Dark Souls player, because whenever I die to a boss and I'm like, okay, I should change my approach, I don't. I just bash my head against the boss until I kill it. I don't really want to do that with Turbo though. Like, I kind of want to say, I kind of want, you can't just run in there and like kill everything in the same way. There are going to be enemies that show up later on which test your muscle memory and try and make you think differently.
For sure, yeah. Well, I mean, you mentioned Titanfall earlier, which, like, Titanfall 2, a game that I should have played much sooner. I only played for the first time very recently, and you compare the wall running, like, being kind of inspired by that. Like, I think something that games like Titanfall 2 do, and I think it's kind of incredible to me, is every stage in Titanfall 2, because it's such a short game, makes you think differently every time. And it sounds like to me you're drawing a lot from that kind of thing. This idea that you don't want people bashing their head against the wall. You want them to discover, explore, and kind of think differently. Like, if they start to hit their head against the wall, you want this game to kind of teach them, well, maybe try something different. Use a different weapon, go a different route, use a different ability, that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's kind of, I guess with that, I'm trying to make it, similar with Titanfall. Every level I want to feel different from the last. I mean, in a demo it's kind of hard to see because a lot of them were quite similar. But
Right.
the further in the game you go, the more it changes it up. Like, some of the upcoming levels in the first episode, one of them's like a tower straight from Dread. Like, you got to basically climb the tower to the top floor, and you got to go through each floor and like clear it out. And then there's another level where it's like set in a plaza, which plays kind of like a old school level from Doom 2, so it's very open. There's a lot of like key doors and backtracking and stuff. Polar opposite from the tower level, where you're basically going from the ground floor to the top. Yeah, I guess with the variation in Turbo, I'm just trying to get it in there with the level design, similar to how Titanfall 2 did it, where every level was a different puzzle.
I mean, I feel like some of the more innovative games, they lean into that kind of stuff, right? Like, it could be really easy to just make something that's pretty straightforward, especially being the shooter expert that you are. You've seen a lot of games, and I'm sure played a lot of games that it's just like, it's the same thing over and over again, and it's fun, and the combat's engaging, but like, you eventually go, okay, well, is there something else? And I think what Turbo has going for it very much, just with the small time that I've spent with it, is that it's not trying to be like something else, but it is clearly inspired by what came before it. It's clearly influenced by what came before it, but it still feels wholly unique. I mean, the opening scene where you jump down and then just like land chainsaw first on a guy, and then just, there you are, you're in the thick of it, go kick some ass. Like, I like that you're discussing that you want to just jump right into the action. I think some of the better difficult games are the ones that don't make you sit with the death, right? Like, you talked about Dark Souls before, like, that you reload instantly, and so you can just get back into it. Like, the games that I find myself clinging to are games like Metroid and games like, even Celeste and things like that, where death isn't really treated as a punishment. It's treated as a minor inconvenience. And it sounds like that also was in your mind as you were designing this game.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pet peeve of mine with modern games. It's like, how long, like, you start a game up and I'm like, oh god, okay, how much tutorial or intro story am I going to have to sit through until I can get straight into the meat of the game, right?
Right.
Which is something that I loved about Doom 2016, was you just jump straight in and you're killing things in the first, like, 10 seconds of the game.
And then every time you die in a game that it like has to slow down and become 15 seconds of your epic doom, even though you've done this a dozen times and you just want to get past this one part. All those little things.
Yeah, I mean, like going back to Halo, it's like a little minor annoyance for me with Halo Infinite, for example. Like when you die, you see yourself dead, you go back to a loading screen, and then you play the encounter again. Whereas in the older Halos, it was you die, you see a dead body, and instantly you're just back in the action.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a lot harder now with modern day, with a much larger game, like how much bigger Halo Infinite is. But yeah, it's just like the less time you have like sitting through stuff where you're not interacting with the game, the better for me.
Do you have anything that you're looking forward to this year? Obviously someone who's played a lot of first-person shooters, there are definitely tons of other shooters on the horizon besides Turbo. Are there some games that you're really looking forward to, things that you're excited to get your hands on?
Yeah, it was Elden Ring, and now that I'm playing that, I find it hard to see myself playing anything else right now. It's
I know.
just, I mean, I don't really care too much about spoilers and stuff, but I looked online. It's like, oh, how big is the map of Elden Ring? And I saw it. I was like, okay, I'm not going to be playing anything for a long time. Yeah, there's so many games I have been looking forward to, and I just haven't gotten around to playing yet. Mostly because I haven't had time. Stuff like Dying Light 2. I want to give that a go. Yeah, it's, other games like I'm a big Stalker fan. Definitely.
Sure.
Yeah, Stalker 2 when that comes out.
I mean, I get that worry, right? Like, I'm someone who didn't expect to get sucked into Elden Ring the way I did. I bought Triangle Strategy in advance on the Switch because I love old school JRPGs, especially, strategy games. I have not touched it. I've just been playing Elden Ring because I like to call it the Breath of the Wild problem. And I mean it as a compliment, right? Like the reason Breath of the Wild, I think, entrenched so many people in the early days of the Switch is because if you picked a direction and you ran in that direction, you'd find something, a dungeon, a temple, a seed, a item, weapon, bad guys, whatever. And like Elden Ring has that also, though you also may risk horrible death very quickly as well in any direction you go in. But it's got that same problem. Part of the fun. And like, I thought that Breath of the Wild was big. Elden Ring is gigantic. I have a friend of the show, Jesse Vitelli, who wrote the review for Prima Games. Like, I talk to him pretty regularly, and he's not beaten the game yet, but he's sunk so many hours into it. And like every so often we'll be chatting and he'll be like, God damn it, I found another part of the map. I didn't think there was any more map to find. And so like your trepidation about not playing anything else ever again is pretty founded from what I've heard, as this game just seems to be enormous in a way that I didn't even think anyone could picture.
Yeah, I had a similar thing to that when I was playing Cyberpunk. I didn't have so many issues with it when it came out because I like upgraded my PC just to play it. So a lot of the performance issues were fine. Like I didn't have any of that, but there were a lot of, I had a lot of bugs, but I still enjoyed it. But by the time I got to the end of the game, I got to the point where I knew I was going to finish it, I said, okay, I'll go back and play some of the quests that I didn't finish. But it got to a point where I would meet a character and I would say, okay, hopefully this quest isn't going to be too long. And it's like, oh no, this is like one of the major characters and it's this massive quest line that's probably going to take like 8 or 9 hours to finish. I'm like, okay, this is, I don't know if I have the time to do this. Like, I don't think I'm going to make it to the end. I just need to finish the game. But fortunately with Elden Ring, like I'm playing it now and I don't have that issue so much just because I'm enjoying it so much.
Right.
Yeah, Elden Ring's, yeah, it's kind of blown me away, like their design philosophy, where you just go in there, they don't give you any clear objective. They just say, do whatever the hell you want, but somehow, it doesn't matter what you do in that game, you're going to have fun with it. No matter what direction you go in, you're going to find something like a worthwhile piece of content. That game just really speaks for itself. Like it doesn't hold your hand. It just, it trusts the player that they know that they're going to, find fun no matter what they do.
Yeah, I mean, I think a big part of that, too, is that open world, right? Like, in a lot of the other Dark Souls games, you're kind of in a hallway. So, like, if you hit a wall, that's it. Like, you could go running up and down that hallway over and over again, killing things, but that's not that fun. But what's nice about Elden Ring is if you hit a wall on a boss, you can go, well, I haven't explored, like, that south part of the map, and there are mini dungeons there. Let's go see what's over there. Maybe I'll get enough stuff to upgrade, and, for me, I was so afraid to fight the first like real boss, as it were, that like, because I'm playing a caster character, an astrologer, so it's all ranged magic, that like I ran around just leveling up and fighting, and then like by the time I got to him, I summoned someone to help me, and we killed him in like 10 10 or 12 hits, and I was like, oh, I guess I overleveled for this fight. All right, cool. All right. I mean, I immediately got smacked down by Godric shortly after, but like still it's that kind of sense of accomplishment. And I think, that's so key to a good gaming experience, right? I feel like most games, it's one thing. Look, challenge is not a requirement, right? Some people just want to enjoy story, and that's perfectly okay too. But I think you want to be engaged in some way. And one of those ways to be engaged is a sense of accomplishment, whether it's just seeing a narrative to the end or beating a really tough boss. Do you find when designing games like Turbo, you want to instill those senses of accomplishments, from achievements to like a hard boss battle or like a really satisfying story moment, things like that?
It's not really something I think about too much. It's more of because I haven't actually ever made a boss battle before. For me, it's more like exploring the map and figuring out all of the quickest paths to go and finishing a combat arena. It's what I get most satisfaction out of. It's like clearing out a big arena full of monsters and just doing it really quick is where I get it's what I enjoy.
Well, and that's more indicative of the first-person shooter genre. There are big bosses in Doom and in other FPSs, but they almost feel perfunctory. And yeah, it's the big fights, it's the big arenas, it's the overwhelming odds, and especially it's probably one of the reasons why multiplayer shooters and arena shooters and everything else has had such a long wave over the past many years. And now Turbo Overkill, it's designed single player first. Am I correct in assuming that?
Yeah, at the moment, mostly single player. There is going to be multiplayer. We've said deathmatch and co-op.
Nice.
With co-op, we're still figuring out how we're going to incorporate that exactly. But yeah, there will be co-op and deathmatch. I guess going back to that sense of achievement is finding new weapons, figuring out how to use them. With weapons, I kind of want to. It's like, yeah, you got all the staples like shotguns and miniguns and whatnot, but I wanted to really have some kind of secondary function to those. So, like using the shotgun, for example, you can use it to rocket jump with its alternate fire.
Nice.
And like trying to figure out like how to, stuff like secrets. So you can go back and replay earlier levels, like at any point in the game with your full arsenal intact. So if you were to finish the game with, your full kit of weapons, and you go back to level 1, there are some secrets that can only be accessed with, arsenal you get later on in the game, right? So
nice.
The first level where you don't have the shotgun, yeah, you can use its alternate fire to like reach higher places that you wouldn't be able to get to, when you first started playing the game. And I feel that, going back and re-exploring levels with, a different mindset, I feel people are gonna really enjoy.
That intrigues the hell out of me. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, replayability is always fun, and exploration is something that I love most in a lot of games. And I'm glad you brought up the weapons, Sam, because like as a first-person shooter player as well, like for me, shotgun is king. Like shotgun is my favorite weapon, and like the first thing I test in any shooter when I get a chance to is the shotgun. It's just because there's something about the impact of a shotgun and like just the short range nature, the power. Like I like short range, high damage. It may be hard to pick a favorite weapon within your baby Turbo, but like, do you have a go-to weapon? Like when you boot up a new game, is there a certain kind of weapon you prefer to use?
A gun philosophy, as it were.
Yeah, a gun philosophy, exactly.
Definitely the double barrel shotgun. That's kind of like, you have to have the double barrel shotgun. Like it's the hardest thing to get right, and I feel that it's like the shotgun test. Like you said, it's definitely a thing. Like if your shotgun sucks, then yeah, it's like it has to be good. And it's similar for me, but with for me it's a double barrel shotgun. Like you have to be able to get close up to any enemy and just like blast them away, instantly. And it's like a hard thing to tune. Like okay, how much spread does it have? How much damage does each pellet do? And it's like, in Turbo, it's like, okay, I wanted to have it where you walk up to a thug and you just shoot him, he just insta-gibs, basically. But yeah, for me, it's definitely, for my favorite weapon currently, it's definitely the double barrel shotgun.
And that was the one I always was. I grew up playing Ultimate Doom, and my cousin's house had the computer that had Doom 2, which was the first one I played. And then when I need Doom at home, and finding out that the double barrel is only in Doom 2 was, one of those early disappointments that I'm still working my way through.
Yeah, I'm always surprised at how little was in like that first shareware episode of Doom. There was only a handful of enemies. There was only like a handful of weapons.
Yeah, they did a lot with it, but like you go back and you go like, oh yeah, no, we don't. Shoulders of giants on that.
Yeah, it's. I had a real bad philosophy when I started Turbo, where I kind of was saying, okay, just do what they did when in the Doom share, where like do the same amount of weapons, the same amount of monsters, and just do that for the first episode of Turbo. But it took me a long time to learn that like I shouldn't just try and follow the structure. Like I should try and make Turbo its own thing, and that was sort of a hard thing to get my head around. Because like I it's not really healthy. I compare a lot of stuff. Like I compare a lot of mechanics. I'm like, okay, well, this game does this. Should Turbo do this? And it was a hard thing to. It's kind of that mentality I had when this is like the first game I've ever made, and there's a lot of old habits that I had from trying to put this thing together that I had to sort of shake.
Well, I mean, honestly, a lot of early developers often have to shake themselves of the idea that they have to craft everything themselves. Think of how many bedroom coders were like, I need to make my own game engine in order to make this.
I even had that in my head at one point, and there's no way.
It's folly.
Yeah. Well, I always heard people say, it's like, oh, if you want to make a game engine, don't expect to make a game with it.
Yeah, pretty much. And it sounds like a lot of the things that are really sticking and are really singing about the design and about this game isn't necessarily because it's too much like this or not enough like another, but because you tried it and it just started making sense and you just started building and building on it. Now, some of the weapons feel delightfully over the top, as well as some of the more cyberpunk modifications. Did you come at that from we're in a cyberpunk world, anything goes? Or was it like, I need to make this happen, and then I'll justify it? Like the chainsaw leg?
Yeah, I guess the latter. Like, I just throw it in as a prototype and see how it feels. It's like having one of the abilities you have is micro missiles, so you can like shoot missiles out of your hand. That was basically me.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not in the demo, unfortunately, but it does come shortly after that, the section in the demo. That came from a necessity of saying, okay, you need some kind of recharging ability like grenades from Doom 2016. And it was more of just saying, okay, so there's this sort of area of the moveset. I kind of need to fill it. What do I do? Okay, just micro missiles. I guess, with the chainsaw leg, it was more of like, okay, a reason for sliding into enemies and killing them. Okay, I guess, stick a chainsaw in his leg.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing I love doing when I'm making games the most is like prototyping, like very early stage prototyping of games, which is probably why I start so many projects and I never finish them. I think Turbo is the one I've gotten the furthest on, but I love prototyping stuff. So I'll prototype new mechanics like all the time, and if I make something that I think is fun, then I'll take it, put it in the game, and try and figure out a way to incorporate it. But the good thing about the cyberpunk universe is it's a very convenient way to make anything happen without having to put much explanation into it.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, can technology do it? Great, then so can their bodies.
Do we have to explain how it fits? No, it's just got to look cool and it pops out.
Yeah,
Duh.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, the art direction of this game is very strong. Like, looking at screenshots and it's very stylish. And like, when you're doing a game like this, you could focus on the combat. You could make the backgrounds more static and kind of samey. A lot of shooters have done it, but y'all have not. Like, you have different bibs and bobs and like the different hallways and the design of the stages and just the aesthetic of the enemies and the rooms. Are you a fan of Cyberpunk? Or is that more like the mold you're using to fit what you want to do? Like, did you grow up watching a lot of cyberpunk stuff, movies, TV shows, kinds of things? Or is this just a new adventure for you because you like this world and want to try it out?
Yeah, I love science fiction. Movies like Blade Runner, I draw a lot of inspiration from that. But cyberpunk as a genre, like, the whole augmentation and trying to make a grounded city rather than a big sci-fi universe is something I'm not really too familiar with. Like Ghost in the Shell, for example, the animated version, I didn't watch that until about 5 years ago. So it's a lot of this is quite new to me. But I love just making stuff I want to be immersed in, like the world of Paradise, which is where the game takes place. Like, I'm basically putting together a vision of what I think Cyberpunk is, but based in my head. So a lot of stuff probably doesn't make much sense, but I'm kind of just like, it's fun to look at. It's for me, it's pleasing. I'll just stick it in without much explanation, and I mean, it's stuff like, okay, just stick holograms in. What's the hologram doing? What's projecting it? I don't know. It doesn't matter.
It services the game.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is what the game is intended to be, and that's what it is. So yeah, then it's successful.
Yeah, I think the vision of this game is very strong. Like within minutes of playing it, within minutes of watching it, you know what this game is, and I think that's a strong brand to have. I will not forget what Turbo Overkill is, just spending a few moments with it, because it just stands out. It pops, as it were. And so I think you mentioned before that obviously Blade Runner was an inspiration. And sure, that you could say that of just about any cyberpunk, anything that's ever come out since Blade Runner. But like, you definitely are making this world your own. And I think that's where the strength of this game will ultimately be when it comes out, is the fact that it stands out from other games that are out at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, like, there were a lot of failures on the way to get here. Like, I did,
of course,
the way I put stuff together, I've put stuff together for this game is not. I guess the benefits being an indie is I only have to write. Like, I'm the only one working on the art side of this, and the sort of, I guess, everything inside of Unity. Anything that's not music related, like, it's basically all the stuff I've been doing, which is, it's kind of a blessing, because I can just throw anything in I want, and I don't have to worry about saying, hey, we need concept for this, or we need art for this. I could just make it and throw it in a day. But at the same time, I would spend a day making a monster, and I'll throw it in the game, and I'll look at it and I'll be like, okay, this looks cool and all, but it doesn't fit. I stand it next to this other monster, which is a bit more grounded. I'm like, okay, this looks completely, art direction wise, it doesn't look anything. They don't look like they're from the same universe. So there have been a lot of times I've made enemies, and I've just said, oh, this looks like crap, and then I'll just go back and redo it again, and try and make it a bit more like, try and make it fit a bit more. So there's a lot of trial and error in the way I've sort of been putting this together. I mean, I look at the game now, and there's still stuff that's in there that I don't really feel is quite there yet. But at the same time, when you have a deadline, you kind of have to just let a lot of stuff go, and hope that nobody notices the the rough edges.
Yeah, if you never tell them. I was going to ask, at what point do you start going, all right, that's enough? Well, deadlines will do that.
Yeah, they do. Especially with this demo, there were some parts of the levels where I'm kind of like, okay, this isn't fully done yet, but it's good enough for now. Just chuck it in. And then there's something I've had to learn recently is, okay, I want to go back and like modify this level now that the demo's done. I can't really do that because there are people that like what's there. And if you take that away, people might get a bit annoyed. It's like, oh, why did you change this? Or if I change something and I think it's better, somebody, there might be a large portion of people that have played it that don't think it's better, that think it's worse. So like, I kind of have to learn. I've had to learn lately to own my mistakes and just sort of realize that, yeah, this is probably not what it's supposed to be, but it is because it's in the game and people have played it, and maybe that mistake is part of what gives it its identity.
Yeah, because no game is going to turn out perfect, because that makes no actual sense, but the game will become itself, and this is just making it its best self, I suppose.
Yeah. As long as it doesn't like lag really badly, then I'm
doesn't
happy.
Lag, doesn't crash.
It doesn't crash.
Yeah. Does it function as game? Excellent.
It's good to have those bars to hit.
Yeah.
Right.
It's always really funny seeing people engage with, like, I watch as many of the live streams as I can of people playing it. And it's always funny seeing people engage with something that's not supposed to be a bit of content, but they still engage with it in a way that is kind of beyond what you expected. It's a weird feeling of like, okay, this game's probably gone a bit beyond me now. Like, I have to sort of just let it be, let it breathe, and do what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Sam, I want to thank you for taking the time to chat with us. This was incredible. We're very excited to play this game when it comes out. But I would love you to tell folks where they can find the game, where they can find you, the best way to support and show their love for Turbo Overkill till it does come out.
Yeah, so we're on Steam. If you go to www.turbooverkill.com, it will take you to the Steam page. Wishlist it, and we haven't announced any release dates yet, but definitely this year will be when the whole game is coming out. We have a Twitter, Turbo_Overkill. You'll also find us on the Apogee channels as well. And we have a Discord as well, which you can find through the Twitter. I believe it's on the top. And yeah, we're also on the Apogee Discord as well with a Twitter, with a channel there as well.
Awesome. Well, definitely everybody go check that out. Please go wishlist this game. I want it to come out in soon because I really want to play it.
It looks so good.
It's just, there are games that feel like they're in my bones, and this is one of those games. And so, Sam, I'm very excited for you to put this out and for us to get to play it. So thank you again so much for taking the time to chat with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Our pleasure. And if you've had a chance to play the demo of Turbo Overkill, please let us know. You know where you can find us. We're still in all the same places: Twitter, Instagram, email, all fun and games pod. Share your thoughts about this game and other shooters. What kinds of things are you hopeful from Turbo Overkill? What do you want to see in this massive neon nightmare that's coming to us soon?
Yeah, what sort of ridiculous things do you hope to do within the game? What sort of wild scenes do you hope to play out? Because I feel like there's going to be some crazy things, and I can't wait to share the things I do and see what everyone else is doing too. And if you want to also continue the conversation, you can go to certainpov.com and check out all the other great shows on our network, as well as a permanent invite link to our Discord server where we talk about games, comics, movies, past episodes, upcoming episodes. We want to hear from all of you.
Yes, please. Also, if you have the chance, maybe consider giving us a rating, writing us a review on your podcast platform of choice. I know that you can now rate podcasts on Spotify as well as Audible and some other places. So we really appreciate that. We are big proponents of growing a gaming community together. We want this to be a happy, warm, and fun place that we can grow together and fight for the things that should be in this space. So please join us on that ride.
Yes, please share your love and joy of gaming, your past, your present, your future, as we do with you and everyone we have on here. And what have you thought of previous episodes, and who do you hope to see on this show in the future? Please, always remember, this is a conversation. Thank you for being a part of it. I'm Jeff Monin.
And I'm Matt A.K. Stormageddon.
And happy gaming. Hey.
Oh, hey, Jeff.
What's going on, guys?
Oh, talking about Superman.
Oh, cool. I could talk about Superman.
I could talk some more about Superman.
We know.
I'll bet a few people would want to get in on this.
I'm down.
You know it.
That sounds like fun. I'll do it.
Cool, let's do it. We can call the show Men of Steel.
And you can find it at certainpov.com.
Or wherever you get your podcasts.
Yay.
CPOV.
Certainpov.com.